value.
Already?
I'd like to call a meeting of Village Board of Weston to order. Roll call.
Maloney.
Here.
Ermeling. Here. Feeney is going to be late. Minell.
Here.
White.
Here.
Zhang is not here and Zagami is excused.
Yep, you just called me. Okay. Number three, also call to order the Planning Commission. Roll call.
White.
Here.
Minell.
Here.
Cronin.
Here.
Gert.
Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Marshall. Here. Plumper.
Here.
And we've got alternate Maloney present. And alternate Zagami is excused.
All right. Planning Commissioner or Planning Chair Lauren White will take the meeting over.
Okay, this is item under item 5 of the agenda, TID District Number 2 Project Plan Amendment. This is Plan Commission. Item 5, proposed project plan amendments to tax incremental district number 2. And we do have, just as a reminder, if you want to make a statement, if you filled out one of these forms, you can speak during the public comment period in this item under the agenda. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. We have a presentation by Kristen Fish, Redevelopment Resource.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Calling up my presentation. Hopefully that will share. My name is Kristen Fish Peterson, and I am with Redevelopment Resources.
Because it's a phone call. We never got onto this.
Oh. Can you mute? Okay.
How many members are out on social?
There's about 9 people.
9? Okay. Thank you.
All right, I have several slides I'd like to share with you tonight. And I'm going to summarize TIF in general. Keith, did you want to start with some comments?
Yeah, I think maybe before Kristen gets started here, we brought Kristen into the process here more recently, but just to kind of recap and summarize where we've been, how we've gotten here tonight. Can everybody hear me, by the way? This process really kind of began about a year ago when we had discussed with the board the status of TID number 2, and that we had some time left that potentially we might want to consider encouraging some redevelopment and development along the Schofield Avenue corridor, consistent with the Schofield Avenue corridor plan. So September 13th of 2021, the project plan was put forward, proposed to the Plan Commission for consideration and approval. I think there are a number of people in the audience that were there that night and understand that at that time, the project plan as was presented was not forwarded, not approved by the Plan Commission. However, there was a part of that plan that was dealing with or recommending a removal of some territory, a change in the boundary that was actually impacting some property, which now, had that not been done, is now that is going to be the site of the new Aldi's that was just announced yesterday by the Aldi's Corporation. So the boundary amendment was a minor part of it, but it was an important part of allowing that property to develop at the southeast corner of Schofield Avenue and Birch Street. That property is not in the TID and has no impact on the TID other than it being out at this point. But we have had numerous meetings with the Plan Commission. There was sentiment expressed that there would be consideration for a scaled back version of the project plan in terms of things that we might consider authorizing expenditures for. So having had several meetings with the Plan Commission and the board, we have arrived at a proposal tonight with a very much scaled back version of a project plan that is proposed for consideration. And I guess that brings us to tonight and tonight's order of business, if you will. So, and Kristen is going to take it from here and kind of walk us through what's in the project plan. So.
Thank you, Keith. I'd just like to give 20 seconds of my background. I own Redevelopment Resources. We're an economic and community development consulting firm in Madison. I have extensive TIF experience from when I worked for the city of Wausau for several years, as well as our firm has done work for the village of Pulaski, the city of Marshfield, the city of Janesville, the village of Rothschild, a few other communities across the state over time. I've also recruited businesses to TIF districts. I have a commercial real estate license, and I've done a lot of commercial real estate development. We're starting our own personal development, so I understand what developers have to go through from a building and redevelopment perspective. We're redeveloping a property in Iowa right now personally. And I want to say that other states have a lot of tools to aid economic and community development, in particular redevelopment. In the state of Wisconsin, TIF is one of the very few tools that economic development professionals have to use to support redevelopment. So it's a very important tool, and I'm going to give everyone just a bit of background. I've also lobbied for TIF legislation and spoken before Senate committees at Senate hearings. So I understand this tool pretty well. I've worked with Greg at different communities, and it is a very dynamic tool for the communities who know how to use it. And we're hoping to help everybody feel comfortable with the village using this tool. So what is tax increment financing? This is a basic TIF model. And what we see in the brown color is the existing tax base. That is revenues from tax properties that are already in the district. The existing tax base will continue to flow to all the taxing jurisdictions, which are the school district, the technical college district, the village, and the county. All the taxes that are collected on the properties that are there now will continue, all that revenue will continue to flow to those entities. What happens when new value is created during and within a TID district? What happens is in the green area, the Joint Review Board, which is made up of a representative from each taxing jurisdiction, so the county, the village, the school district, and the technical college district, they all give permission for the village to use these funds, all of the incremental funds, all the new tax base that's created in green, to use those for projects within the district for a period of time. The period of time on this district really only lasts until 2032. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, that's right.
And once that time is up, then all of the tax base revenue goes to all the taxing jurisdictions. So what happens during a TIF district during that period of time, so the next 10 years, is that the village will get to keep any incremental revenue generated from new projects to do things within the district, like redo Schofield Avenue or incentivize more redevelopment. If you live within, if your property is within a TIF district or it's not within a tax incrementing financing district, your taxes will not be affected because of this district. They will not go up because of this district. The idea behind a TIF district is all the other taxing jurisdictions are saying, yes, we give you permission to use the incremental value created during this time to do things because we know that without this money, development will not occur. And that's called the but-for clause. That's a very important part of the state statute. We can't do any of this but for the fact that this wouldn't happen without this tool. So it's complicated, and I hope that if you have questions, you can ask them later, and I'll try to clear a few more things up as I go along here, but that's kind of a short description of TIF. So why is the village proposing to amend this plan now? When the village started the TID2 plan, creating a TID project plan is difficult because you have to look 20 some years into the future and anticipate what could happen in there, and you have to plan for that. The state statute allows you to amend the district up to so many times up to 4 times for a boundary amendment and a few other things. The last amendment you did was a boundary amendment where you carved out the Aldi's property. The good news about that is Aldi's is not getting any incentives at all. They're coming in and they're building without an incentive because they're not within the district. So that development will occur and can occur because they're not expecting anything. But why is the village proposing to amend this plan now? It's because when the village first wrote this plan, they didn't include incentives to developers for redevelopment. They didn't include that ability to incentivize redevelopment. So whenever there's a change in a task, the plan can be amended. So we're recalibrating the plan to meet the needs in 2020 versus what they anticipated in the 2000s. There will be an increase in commercial activity, jobs, and residents within and near TID2 to spur related growth and activity within the district. And they will advance commercial and mixed-use redevelopment supporting infrastructure. They also hope to capitalize on opportunities suggested in the Schofield Avenue Corridor Plan that was adopted in 2021 by the Plan Commission and the board. So in order to implement what was recommended in that Schofield Avenue Corridor Plan, that's hopefully what's going to come of the result of this amendment. So what benefits would there be to landowners and business owners within the district? So for interested landowners and business owners and developers, a reinvigorated TID2 would close financing gaps for redevelopment, expansion, and new development, assist with site prep, including demolition, remediation, and relocation if necessary, facilitate acquisition and land cost write-downs, and build amenities that exceed minimum standards. I spoke for just a brief minute about a redevelopment project we're doing in Iowa, and I can tell you that redevelopment is the most expensive kind of activity because you have to deal with what's there first before you can even start developing something. In our case, we have an old hospital that we have to completely gut. We have to put on a new roof. We have to put in new electrical and everything. It's very, very expensive. So for a developer to come in, it would be much easier for them and cheaper for them to build on a greenfield site, which is a site that has nothing on it right now. But to come in to do redevelopment, the project costs immediately go up because they have acquisition, they have demolition, they have to deal with what if there are contamination issues on the site or whatever was left over from the previous owner. So to support those developments with incentives is helping them close financing gaps. The bank is only going to let them borrow so much. They have all these costs and there is going to be a gap. So in order to help the village create tax base and jobs within this district, that's what TIF is used for. TID2 can also support infrastructure to ensure continued good street access and utility service for existing development and redevelopment along Schofield Avenue. So the village is not proposing to rezone any land unless the landowners are interested. And development is going to be allowed under the current zoning that will still be allowed. The village is also not requiring that landowners redevelop or sell their land. If people in this area aren't interested in selling and redeveloping, then nothing will happen. There's no requirement to make them do that. There will be no immediate spending on land acquisition, infrastructure, or development incentives within TID2, but the TID plan has to say that this could happen in order for it to be able to happen. An example of when the city of Wausau wrote something into one of their TIF plans, in one of their plans in the industrial park, they put in creating a spec building or building a spec building. They had no idea if they would ever be able to do that. But because they did that, that's what allowed them to use TIF funds to build the Wausau Business Incubator that's on 72nd Avenue. So they had enough forethought to write that in there. At the time that this original TID project plan was written, that if something was left out of it, like incentivizing redevelopment, it couldn't happen. So this is why we have to amend the plan to change the language to include the words and list the action that would be taken. Any listed expenditure would require later authorization from the village board on a case-by-case basis. So by approving this amendment, you're not approving automatically giving incentives to redevelopment projects. every project is gonna have to come back to the board for approval. And all the deals will be vetted very carefully to make sure it's a true gap in their pro forma, to make sure that it's gonna generate enough tax base, and to make sure there will be jobs created and meet the goals set out in not only the comprehensive plan, the TID plan, and the Schofield Avenue Corridor Plan. Expenditures would be tied to revenues and priorities, just like I mentioned. And listed expenditures may not actually occur, but if they're not accounted for, they cannot occur. So if we don't say this could happen in the plan, we can't do it. That's why it's so hard to create these things 20 years before something might happen. So the proposed amendments to the project plan include allowing funding for redevelopment costs that would not occur but for. So those include things like site preparation, extraordinary project costs, land purchase, marketing, bridging financing gaps, et cetera. One of the other things that we added to this plan was potential infrastructure projects limited to the Schofield Avenue corridor, improve transportation safety and access, and enhancements to improve business and living environments like pedestrian crossings, low maintenance streetscape, and drainage improvements. These are the kinds of infrastructure improvements that by increasing the ability to generate new property tax base, we can help pay for some of these public costs through TIF. That's the beauty of this tool. So the exact incentives that we're proposing, we expanded the budget by $2.75 million to support redevelopment per the Schofield Avenue Corridor Plan. The village could realize redevelopment projects over the next 10 years, adding as much as 24 million of assessed value. And the target properties located within the district are now only generating less than 6 million in assessed value today. So actually we had a really neat example of how we improved an area in Watertown, Wisconsin, on a project I worked on over the last several years, where the 6 buildings that were targeted for redevelopment were only generating $25,000 in property taxes every year. And now they have a $13 million hotel, or excuse me, mixed use apartment, mixed use multifamily and retail building that's going to generate over $200,000 a year. So they exponentially went from 25,000 in property taxes to over 200,000 in property taxes by redeveloping that area using TIF. So this type of transformational redevelopment will not occur but for the development incentives allowed under the tax increment district. So a summary, our first priority projects are supporting redevelopment of underperforming properties at 2.75 million that I just mentioned. And there is an item in there that would allow the village to acquire and prepare land for redevelopment up to $750,000. That may not be used at all, but it may be necessary in some cases. The second priority is the potential reconstruction of Schofield Ave, and that's budgeted at $3.5 million. So we looked at what was originally allowed under amendment number 1, the project costs, the original and amendment number 1 project costs, and what was actually expended. Those are in columns 1 and 2. And then the amounts I outlined just now in column 3 include 3.5 million for public infrastructure, 750 for land acquisition and preparation for redevelopment, and 2.75 million for development incentives. In tax increment financing, you can also charge administration costs, legal and planning costs to the district, as well as interest. So the district can pay for interest on financing or borrowing. And what I like to say TIF districts is it's a self-funding mechanism. The redevelopment or the development that's created pays the bills for everything that we're doing here. The new development that would be created, that increment, that new tax, remember that area in the green, that's what pays for this. So the people who are developing within a district, their property taxes are paying this all off because the other taxing jurisdictions have given us permission to use those taxes for a period of time.
Christine,
Yes.
can I ask?
Can I wait until she's done or? Right,
Just references this particular slide. so I can wait.
Okay. I only have 40 more slides, just kidding, I don't. So in the redevelopment corridor plan, these sites that are identified A, B, C, D, E, and F have been identified through that process back in 2021. Mark Ruffers was leading that planning process, and I believe he spoke with these property owners at the time. And so they understand that they aren't going to be required to sell their property, but there is a higher and better use for some of those properties, and this would be an opportunity if they were interested. Identified as well were the types of uses that could go in there, and I believe mixed use commercial is what's recommended in this area. Nothing strictly residential, I think, is allowed right now, but a mixed use property would include residential above a commercial use. So retail, office, or service related commercial uses on the main floor and residential up above. So some advantages of amending the district: maximize the partnership with other taxing jurisdictions, to use the tax revenues generated by new development or redevelopment to support investment on key infrastructure, and where appropriate, encourage investment through incentives. The Joint Review Board met on Monday? Yesterday, and they didn't have any questions. We had representatives from the village, the school district, and the technical college on the line. And they were there. This was an informational meeting for them, but none of them voiced objections to this. So they understand what allowing this TID to stay open means to how that impacts their budgets. Also, an advantage is promoting development and redevelopment that would not otherwise occur. And it also generates new tax growth. That the point about not otherwise likely to occur, I know some of these developers that I would be targeting if I were to start marketing this area to them, and they have opportunities all over the state. In fact, one of them called me several months ago and said, who wants multifamily in their community? And I said, Beloit needs it really bad. I didn't say Weston because I wasn't aware of this opportunity at the time, but I definitely could call him back and say, hey, Weston's open for business and they're interested in working with you. So that's the kind of, these developers have opportunities all over the place. By helping them see opportunities here in Weston, that will work to attract new tax base to the village. So some of the disadvantages of closing the district now, you would lose the ability to partner in development and redevelopment of Schofield Avenue corridor until another TID could be formed after 2032. All the infrastructure would be funded through debt service levy. For example, Schofield Avenue repaving would cause an increase on a $200,000 home of $60 on the property taxes. So if the TID wasn't amended and allowed to pay for that, then that would be something that the taxpayers would have to pay for through the village would have to authorize general levy borrowing for that. So can the district be kept open if no firm commitments are made for project expenditures? By the statutory requirements, the village needs to either amend this project plan by April 15th or close the district. Those are the options. And the reason we're having this meeting now on March 29th is because April 15th is the deadline. So how will this district and its opportunities for development and redevelopment be marketed? The village is contracted with my firm to support the marketing efforts, and those efforts the next phase of our work, if this is approved, is that we would be meeting with all the property owners in the TID with potential redevelopment sites. We'd be checking in with them. What's your interest in redeveloping? If every one of them says we're not interested, then that'll be short conversations. If any of them says they are interested, then we would look for ways to market their site for them. And I would develop high quality marketing pieces that could be distributed to as many developers as possible. But I have personal relationships with Raleigh Lockery, Chuck Adorsey, Terrence Wall out of Madison, and several other developers that I've worked with in other communities and that have developed using TIF in other communities. In fact, that $13 million mixed use development in Watertown was the T-Wall, Terrence Wall development out of Madison. And he's looking for opportunities. I know this about him. He's looking for opportunities in smaller communities. He's developed a lot in Madison, Middleton, and that metro area, and he sees opportunity. He knows there's a housing need in communities like, and Raleigh Lockery was the developer I told Beloit was looking for housing. So I would reach out directly to those that I know are interested in developing these products, and then I would reach out to people that I know that I haven't worked with directly, but would be marketing aggressively, proactively like that. The village could also seek other outside professional services if necessary. And all of a sudden I'm having a connection issue. See, it's kind of spinning.
Yep.
Mr. Garrett, well, there's a pause. You had a question.
Yeah, maybe Jessica could help us with this. When I'm looking at page 14 of the, Christine had that slide up, where it says actual expended costs as of 12/31 of 2021. The public infrastructure was 3.230.
Yeah.
The land acquisitions was 0. The development incentives was 271, 746. General administration, legal and planning was 653, 919. Financing costs and interest was 1,694, 994. That one really slaps a person in the, where is that? And that looks like it's from 12/31 of 2021. Where did that money go?
That was from the inception from 2004 through 2021. Those were the numbers. So we did borrow.
So that's from 2004?
Yeah, from
Okay.
2004 through 2021.
Okay. And that was borrowing and interest costs, financing?
1.6 was interest costs.
Okay.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Gary, is that your questions? Or you have another one?
It just looks like a lot of cost.
Oh, we did borrow quite a bit. I don't remember
This original amendment for project number 1 cost, it shows 921,000 in interest and financing cost.
That was the estimate
That was what was budgeted.
budget, but the.
Okay, and then it went to 1.6.
Next column.
How do we go over that far by almost 2?
the board approved additional borrowings beyond what was originally planned.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you for allowing Mr. Garrett to ask this question. Go ahead, Kristen.
All right, so the Bud 4 tests, go back one slide, I think, or go forward one. Yep. So the criteria for the Bud 4 test that are being met through this amendment. So we have to understand that this redevelopment will not occur along the corridor without support from the TID. Approving the amendment will allow TIF dollars to be invested directly toward increased tax base, higher property tax values, which would not occur without this financing tool. And additionally, utilizing TIF to make improvements to Schofield Ave will provide a financing mechanism that would pay for the improvements that would otherwise not occur in the same manner within the same time frame. So Schofield Avenue, we were hoping to. Am I creating feedback or?
No.
Okay, somebody on, okay. So these projects, none of these things would happen without, in the same timeline or in the same manner, without support from the TID. They could happen, but I don't see a developer being interested in redeveloping a site along Schofield Avenue without some sort of support, because you can't generate enough revenue in rent to pay the debt and all the costs that you would have on a redevelopment project. So in summary, the project plan, and this is right in the project plan, right out of the project plan. It will promote the continued and orderly redevelopment within TID 2 by facilitating further high-quality commercial mixed use and residential revitalization and tax-based growth to an extent that would not occur but for the support from this district. It would increase commercial activity, jobs, and residents, promote higher-end sustainable site and building designs and practices. It would support safe and efficient movement along and across Schofield Avenue. And it would enable the village to contribute to the advancement of TID 2 as a center of business, business development and gathering in a rapidly evolving market. In general, aiding in the implementation of the adopted Schofield Avenue corridor plan through the portion of its planning area that intersects with TID 2, including the potential redevelopment sites and opportunities identified in that plan. So this is the funding mechanism that allows the village to implement the Schofield Avenue corridor plan that was approved by the village.
Thank you. For Planning Commission members, is there any questions you have for Kristen?
Okay, did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, at this point in the meeting, we'll have public comment. I have one who's written one out first. I'll take that gentleman first. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. And step forward to the podium and name and address the record. And we do have people on social media, correct, Michael?
Correct, yeah.
For those people, if they want to make a comment, if you know how, raise your hand and I'll get to you. And I'll count on Michael to let me know when somebody needs to make a comment. But we'll take Mr. Pensinel first. He's been here enough. I know him by sight, so.
We're still gonna play the game. So this can't cut into my 5 minutes, but do you have to open the public or the planning commission? I only heard the,
We did.
oh, very well.
I opened it. I did the board
Did
first.
them both. Okay, I didn't hear roll on both.
I think
Very
I'm
well,
good.
carry on. Good evening, my name is Jim Pensinel. I reside at 5002 Arrow Street in Weston. Tonight we're assembled to discuss amending the TID 2 project amendments. Tax increment financing is an economic development tool used by municipalities, we just learned some of this here a minute ago, to encourage growth in redeveloped blighted areas. This tool is similar to other tools used here by the village. The Village of Weston has 16 pieces of equipment which it regularly uses for the duties of snow removal, according to a report published by the Public Works Director in January of 2022. These pieces of equipment I would consider tools. They are things that by themselves are not at all useful to the taxpaying citizens in the village. But when these tools are used correctly and operated by skilled individuals who have been given proper guidance and training on their use, they become extremely valuable assets to not only our residents, but to anyone traveling throughout the village. Our Public Works Department does a fantastic job of clearing snow from our streets. This does not happen by accident though. There are regular trainings, meetings, and communications held so that the staff knows exactly how to best employ the tools that they have available to accomplish the task of snow removal. Furthermore, there's a dedicated leader, published procedures, expectations, and measurable goals set for the utilization of our snow removal tools. Director Wadolski has specific goals set on balancing a quality snow removal event, utilizing the most cost-effective approach to his assets, and then being accountable if his department makes a mistake or falls short. We're all human and no one is perfect. Sometimes a cul-de-sac is missed in the plowing procedure or a mailbox sustains damage. Mr. Wadolski does an excellent job of collecting that feedback and then dispatching his team back out to make things right. This is the accountability aspect of that tool at work. The snow removal tools are also not used for personal gain. I've never seen a piece of village equipment plowing a driveway of a residence. Doing such things would simply not be permitted by the Public Works Director, and rightfully so. Just think of how awful our snow removal process could go if there were no one managing its operation. There were no specific plans, no goals, no accountability, no policies set up. It could snowball quite quickly into a bad situation. Now let's talk about another tool that the village has, tax increment financing. There is no village employee, administrator, or leader of the TIF tool here that I know of. There's no formal plan out of how to best utilize this tool to develop and redevelop our community. There is no accountability for the misuse or underutilization of this tool. There is no one person who has in their job description, you are to manage the use of tax increment financing and will be held accountable if this tool is mismanaged or goals are not met. So what can we do? Couldn't we apply a similar strategy on how we manage our tax increment financing tool here in Weston as we do to managing our snow removal tools? I ask that our planning commission and the board of trustees direct the staff to appoint a staff person or persons to direct the management of both of the TIFs in our village. This person shall be charged with the management of all aspects of the TIFs. They are to be held accountable for the successes and shortfalls of the utilization of the TIF. They are to set achievable goals which promote economic development and the redevelopment in TID 1 and TID 2. Excuse me. These measurable goals should include specifics such as, in 2022, I will grow TIF 2 by $3 million in value. If that goal is not met, they should be held accountable for the underperformance of their duties. They should also report to the board on a monthly basis, just like every other department does, so that there's transparency in their operations. The chief of police is expected to report how many arrests were made and if he's staying within his budget. Shouldn't our TIF director? If we rubber stamp this thing this evening, as it is written tonight, without mandating that the TIF tool is managed properly, then we have done a great disservice to our village taxpayers. Action is not required to be taken on this matter this evening. I challenge the statement that was made earlier this evening that says we must act by April 15. Mr. Donner, can you please clarify this with the letter that was, please show that to the audience when I'm done here, with the letter from the Department of Revenue and from our village attorney that conflicts with the statement that was made. We're already actively working on amending TIF Plan 2 so that it can be finally utilized as it was designed to be 20 years ago to benefit the village in its entirety. This can come back to Planning Commission and public hearing for action next month or the following month with no detriment to the village. I commend the Planning Commission and the board for taking a serious look at this topic and attempting to make improvements to it. Finally, I would ask that the plan proposed is amended to remove any and all language giving the village permissions or the capability to purchase property. Unless a staff or board member can point to a specific parcel in TID 2, which is targeted for purchase by the village, I see no reason to include this capability. The village has purchased property in the past, and as a whole, they have done a terrible job at marketing it and making it a worthwhile investment to the taxpayer. There are people who are really good at buying property for development and making a profit on them. They call them developers. Let's leave the people who are good at that job to do that job and remove even the possibility of another pipe dream like the failed Camp Phillips Center project from happening. Thank you all for your time.
Before you step down, are there any plan commission members that have a question? Thank you, Mr. Pincinel.
Thank you.
There is a person online that has a request for public comment.
I would like to handle, since the people are sitting here
That's fine.
and they're at home, they can,
Just want to make sure you're aware.
okay, thank you for making aware. Is there anyone else here in the audience that wishes to speak for or against? Step forward, name and address for record, please. Nobody? That's pretty unusual. Okay, Michael.
Desire to be very well informed citizens.
Okay, Michael.
Yep. Yeah, so it looks like Jim Russell is interested in public comment.
Okay, could you find out if he can hear us, first off?
Jim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. This is Jim Russell, Weston, Wisconsin, 5904 Tricia Avenue.
Go ahead.
Okay. TID 1 was mature in 2021 and was extended another 10 years because of insufficient funds to close it. The village also amended TID 1 to add $23.4 million worth of property to the TID last year. Therefore, there will be no return on investment to the taxpayers for another 10 years through property tax relief. According to the MacIver Institute in 2019, TID 1 was pulling in $5.4 million a year with none of the property taxes going into the general fund. By comparison, the general fund received $4.5 million in property tax collections in 2019. If TID 1 had been closed, that money would have gone directly towards tax relief. TID 1 is an example of government mismanagement. TID 1 information obtained from the administrator showed $12 million was given for lines of credit and $3 million given in grants, with several of the businesses subsequently closing and going out of business. Additional information received from the administrator on the infamous Camp Phillips Center project showed the village lost $922,067.70. The project did not go forward due to the DNR not improving wetlands to be used for development. If the village of Weston is in the business of selecting winners and losers, we as taxpayers lose. Banks are in the business of making money, not losing money. Government does not follow that business plan. Should government be the arbiter as to which businesses or developers receive grants or lines of credit with little or no oversight? The MacIver Institute warns municipalities of the dangers of TID financing. I am opposed to funding TID 2 with $8.3 million to subsidize business and developers. The plan includes grants that would be made in cash to owners, lessees, or developers. Over the years, numerous businesses and developers have built apartment buildings and business structures without subsidies from the village of Weston. If the businesses grew and developed organically, depended upon their resources only, they would be adding to the overall increase in property tax collections, resulting in lowered real estate taxes. In a recent meeting, the village was wondering how to fund additional police officers. State law only allows a municipality to have up to 12% of its total equalized value contained in TIDs. The village had 21% of its total value tied up in TIDs. That 21% has enormous implications for residents of the village. It is real property that requires real public services from the community, things like fire and police protection, ambulance, schools, snow plowing, etc. However, the property in the TID is not paying property taxes to the general fund to support those services. It all goes into the TIDS account, which is used for the TIDS improvement projects instead. Wisconsin currently has a distinction of holding place number 45 of the 50 states in the highest real estate taxes. Only New Jersey, Illinois, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Vermont have higher real estate taxes than Wisconsin. As a constituent, I sincerely believe the village needs to take care of its residents. Adding money to TID 2 does not increase the tax revenue to provide community services such as police and fire protection, ambulance, schools, snow plowing, etc. My question is, why are you not concerned for the residents in the fixed income or budget? Your constituents are struggling financially from the pandemic as well as rising inflation. Subsidizing businesses and developers is only increasing the village's debt and our taxes. Therefore, I ask you vote no on the amendment to fund TID 2 with an additional $8.3 million. I think it would also be advisable to allow the newly elected trustees in April to make this decision and give them a shot at it. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Plan Commission members have a question? Anyone else, Michael?
Nobody else has.
One last time, anyone from the audience wishes to step forward, make a statement, or have a question?
I will.
Go ahead, step forward, name and address for the record, please.
My name is John Rondo. I live at 5403 JM Place, Weston. I've been at the last meeting of this. What happens with TIF districts, we deal with Mosinee, all the communities around us. My partner and I had a business in the Mosinee TIF district. I saw how crooked it was run and how badly it was run. There was a building built without the proper drainage. They stuck $175,000 into developing the drainage for the business. What happens is my partner, when he went to build his new building, when we built our first building, they would only sell us 3.5 acres because they didn't think we were going to make it. 10 years later, we had to build a new building because they let a building build right next to us. So we ran out of space. So we purchased some more property on the other side. And by luck, we were able to sell our building. He went to 4 or 5 other places to see where we were going to build. Everybody offered a deal. So the best deal we got was from Mosinee again. But this time they gave us everything we wanted because they wanted to keep us. When I look at these TIF districts and the city starts picking winners and losers, what they're going to do is pick out the loser that has the best connections in Weston for that piece of property. And all of a sudden, that property will be fixed. And if they would come up with a set price for a piece of property, you can't go any above this. But if we give them $8.5 million, they can almost use this money any way they want. And there's no restrictions and nobody watches. And I can't believe that we're gonna go and do this again. This thing was almost voted out last time. And there was more people here that were upset about it. And everybody acts like, oh, that was nothing. But I think this is almost embarrassing when you look at a property that's down near the log cabin. It sits there now, they got a sign out there for sale. That place has been for sale probably for 5 years. But now that they think they're gonna have somebody come in and buy it from the city of Schofield, they got a price on it. And this is what happens. If we want to raise prices on buildings, raise the taxes. You'll tax a guy out if you think that's a perfect spot for a building to go in. But these people put a high price on it and hoping that the city will buy it. And I can't see why anybody want to do that. But if you guys want to pick winners and losers, this city is going to be one of the losers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions by Plan Commission members? No? Excuse me. Do you wish to make a comment?
No, I want to listen to see what's going on.
Okay. Right now, we're holding a public comment period during a hearing.
Well, I still want to listen.
Yes, you can. Yeah, welcome. Sit down.
Okay.
Just want to make sure.
I might have something to say. I don't know.
Well, window is rapidly closing.
At this point in the agenda, this is public comment right now. Anyone else in the audience? For or against? Anyone else in the audience for or against? One last time. Anyone else for or against? Pardon? Michael, anyone else online?
Nobody else, no.
Okay, so I'm gonna close the public hearing. This part of the agenda is the discussion and action by the Plan Commission. And it doesn't involve feedback from the public unless Plan Commission members have questions of anybody that's in the audience. So, discussion and action by Plan Commission. People, go ahead, jump in.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Minell.
What was he talking about, when Jim mentioned that about the
Hearing aid.
April 15th wasn't the correct date?
I think we have an expert in the law here right now, Greg Johnson, who has given the advice that, yes, April 15th is the date that we need to inform the Department of Revenue what the fate of TID 2 is.
Right, but Jim, you brought up that there was some, evidently there's other letters from our,
I believe there were two letters, I think there's actually three letters, two from the Department of Revenue and one from the village attorney.
Matt Eady.
Correct, and it's my understanding, if I recall correctly, that the flavor of these letters was that we either had to do something with it, or if there were no expenditures to happen, that we should close it. However, if we're working on modifying the plan, we don't have to rush through to modify it by April 15. It could go to May 15. Yes, it would be retroactive then, because this thing has to be done by April 15 and then it goes back to 21 financing. Is that correct?
You're creating a foregone conclusion that the plan commission is gonna approve this, is the way I would look at it. Because it stays open then for another full year.
Correct.
2 full years, actually.
Correct.
For the remainder of this year and the remainder of next year.
If it is to be closed, it has to be closed by April 15 in order to, because it goes back retroactive to 21, is that correct?
You still
Financing?
collect the increment this year and it closes for any collections of taxes after January 1 of 2023, correct, Greg?
Correct. The district will collect increment in this fiscal year, 2022. If the district is not terminated by April 15th of this year, the district will remain open and collect increment in fiscal year 2023, which means the incremental value won't return to the tax rolls next year. You'll have to wait another year. So that's the April 15th is the date for all TID districts in the state to close in the calendar year. You go past that date, it stays open another year. You can't retroactively go back and fix it.
So that was my point, was that it doesn't have to be, unless you have to have it closed to close it out for this year, then it has to be done by April 15. But if we're still working on a plan, we can't get the plan done in 11 days, then it stays open another year and we fix the plan.
Okay. Again, Mr. Marnell, did that answer your question?
Well, that answered my question. I'm still stumbling with the services that are provided for the police force and the fire department and stuff. I'm still not real comfortable having this any type of development happening here, and yet, you know, the people of Weston have to pay for those services, and yet the incremental increase doesn't do it. You know, so I'm very concerned that when you have a mixed use building, if you're adding apartments, whatever the number is, if we're gonna be using those services for that, they should be paying for it. That's how I view it. And I don't think that's what happens here. Just because of the way our mix is right now, the way our tax revenues are, you know, for our commercial properties in TIF 1 and TIF 2, it just seems to be excessive to subsidize any type of multi-use or apartments in the district. I just not comfortable with that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start calling on everybody. Mr. Mumper.
I would just say that, like everyone else or many of the people here, I'm a taxpayer in Weston. I think some of the misunderstanding comes into play as to what happens when we close the district, or if we were to close the district, for example, tonight. And Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the increment that we would return to the taxpayers would more than likely be offset by by probably triple, if and when we redevelop Schofield Avenue. In other words,
10 cents versus 30 cents.
I mean,
Yes, so when the impact on the taxes, your taxes would have a greater impact going up than going down if we were to close tonight. And that's if we were to choose to do Schofield Avenue.
correct. And correct me if I'm wrong, what is the estimated remaining life of Schofield Avenue?
Michael, I think you said.
Yeah, I'm probably looking at somewhere in the 7-year range.
So prior to when we would close, or otherwise would close the district, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I just want to make sure taxpayers understand, as verified by Jessica, if you close this tonight, yes, you'll get a short window of incremental reduction in property taxes, followed by a much greater increase if we close the TID. and do not use it for Schofield Avenue redevelopment. So I've looked at it and said, in my viewpoint, I'm very much in favor of development in the Weston area. I think we have some opportunities on Schofield Avenue. If we're able to provide some type of redevelopment funding to achieve the but-for test, because I don't see development occurring on many of those properties without getting it to some level of assistance. I don't think they will be developed otherwise. And part of the other thing, at least my understanding is part of the reason Weston has a large portion of property tax within TIF districts is because they've been extremely successful in the past. That's, if you don't create any development, you wouldn't have any of those large percentages. And my final comment is, I understand your point about picking winners and losers. I have no interest in seeing anyone in personally enriched because of this, but you still have to vet this, any dollar that's spent for any assistance with the board. It's not going to happen but for the board approving it. So when people are saying that we're going to spend $8 million in this TID, well, first off, that's not the case. We're committing to spending nothing other than the potential.
Question now.
This is discussion for Mr. Mumper unless he wants to waive his time.
Not at this point. So for all of the reasons that I've listed, I feel that redevelopment is a good thing and I'm in favor of extending the TID and attempting to actually generate some development on Schofield Avenue. So I'll pass it on now.
Mr. Jordan?
So the reason that we rejected this previously was because it was pretty wide open. And to Jim's point, there was the opportunity for money to be spent on things that not all of us really thought was in the best interest of what we're trying to accomplish. So we're at this point today because we have whittled it back significantly with some, to Jim's point, some very clear direction from the Plan Commission as far as what should be done. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read this, but whoever wrote this put a lot of forethought into what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And again, to Jim's point, there is a plan here that I think is pretty well laid out as far as who's accountable for it. I guess I would leave that to the board to determine who those individuals should be that monitor this. But at this particular point, I am also in favor of this because we have had this open for a long period of time. There isn't a lot to be gained by closing it. There is a disadvantage as far as eventually doing something with Schofield Avenue, which isn't, to me, long-term. And we have written into the plan that there's this opportunity to redevelop these properties before we spend money to do something on Schofield Avenue that would have to be torn up for whatever reason, you know. So I think there's good communication between Michael and the board as far as, so what are the priorities, when is it going to happen? Let's do this in a well thought out manner so that we don't end up tearing up our recently rebuilt street because of something that's going to happen. So for all of those reasons, I am also in favor of it. Full disclosure, I do own a piece of property that's inside the district. I have no intention of asking for money to do anything with that property. I have no expectation that I would never consider asking the village for money at a loss of supply. We've had opportunities to participate in that, and we have never asked for that because we have in fact funded that ourselves. But the reality is for the last 20 years, these same properties are in pretty much the same condition that they were. And if we don't do something proactively, I don't see how anything is going to happen for those. So don't intend to recuse myself because I am not looking for any particular advantage myself. If somebody came to me and wanted to buy that property value for what it's assessed for on the tax rolls today, I would sell it to them for that. So like I say, I just feel pretty strongly about this now that there is a plan that makes some sense.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I'm gonna skip ahead. I'm gonna get Ms. Marshall. I'd hate to have you wait to the end.
I just wrote down that, Mr. Mumper, that the reason that we have a large percentage of, is because of our success, but it's also because TID 1 was extended by 10 years. It was supposed to be closed in 2021, and we won't be having this discussion about being in double what the state recommends through a limit of 12% of equalized value. So that extension of 10 years is why we're, like I said, more than double. When I look at the cash flow analysis, what we're asking is that, should we leave this district open another 10 years or should it be closed? The total revenues that were projected, if you did nothing, it would generate $3.5 million, I believe, just the way it is, without any additional investment. So we're looking at about 9 million, so an additional $5.5 million, I believe is the way I'm reading it. Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the district, if no other value was created, it's generating $630,300 per year. So we're projecting, if you went ahead with, if you wanted to fund all the project costs that were identified in this amendment, you'd need to see another 10 million of incremental value generated over the remaining life of the district to pay for the development incentives, Schofield Avenue, and just the other administrative and ongoing planning costs in the district.
And we're adding an additional $4.3 million between the developer incentives, land acquisition, and the administrative and professional services. So you're generating additional 5.5 million of increment and you're spending 4.3 million. It's not a big margin to be off over a 10-year period, expecting recessions. And again, this is over a 10-year period. So the plan is not what I would call bulletproof. If you were in business, would you run on that kind of margin? I'm guessing not.
But it doesn't have to be spent over.
Thank you.
But that's the plan that we're, right? But you're right, it doesn't have to be spent.
Mr. Cronin. Pardon? Oh, Keith.
Could I ask, when you express the number that you're talking about, the annual tax increment and then the total over the 8 years, is it your perception that that's all coming back to the village?
I'm just looking at the cash flow analysis.
Right, so is it your understanding that all that money, all that tax increment comes back to the village?
No, I know that that has to be shared with the school district and with the village operations and NTC and the county.
Right, so generally what we get 30% of whatever we get back. I think about, maybe only about half of that is what actually comes back to all the taxing jurisdictions, just in general, is what I think we have talked about a little bit internally, but it's difficult to come up with what that exact number is. As we've said, the amount that would come back to our general operations, if it were to close annually right now, it'd be like $70,000.
Yeah.
For our general tax collection.
And that represents the 9 cents, correct?
I believe that's where.
That, the 9 cents?
Is it?
9 or 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
And that's,
listed
and
one
that's,
of our questions.
and that's the village, that's the village's portion, right? Okay. Right.
So I just wanted to be clear on what your understanding of that. Thank you.
Mr. Cronin.
I think since September, that meeting in September, we've had a lot, almost every month. We've sat here and discussed, and I know I saw a lot of you there that night, and I want everybody to know that we fully heard what you had to say. I mean, we said no, we came back and talked at length, meetings, I would say, I mean, got heated and argumentative at times. And we tried to put forth a plan that we thought everybody could wrap their heads around. When I look at our equalized value, that we have in TID, we have 23% currently. TID 1 accounts for just over 21% of that, and TID 2 is about 2%. The focus of this amendment tonight is on TID 2, not TID 1. And the reason I say that is because I think we have more or less bigger fish to fry than this issue. I see a lot of potential for development on Schofield Avenue. I think it makes sense financially for the road, whereas if we finance part of the road through TID, we're looking at 9 cents over 10 years versus 30 cents over however long it takes, however long the bonds are to repay that debt. So I guess from those few standpoints, I would be in favor of an amendment at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Gearing.
I'm in favor of the amendment, for several reasons, but, it's the smart thing to do for our taxpayers at this point. You know, we can give up 9 or 10 cents to turn around and charge ourselves back 30 cents. We have the opportunity not only to save our taxpayers that cost, but also I understand and sympathize where Steve is coming from with our police and fire. But also what we don't recognize is at the end of that term of that, they're also getting a huge boost when they do get it. So they may suffer for the short term portion of that. But once they do get that tax increment given to them, it's a heck of a boost. And that's why you see our school district add on as well when they do. They're able to utilize that huge boost. And that will also come back to our fire, safety, and our police. So I'm a firm believer in it. I understand that most of us do understand the cost to do things now is incredibly expensive. And if we want to have development in our community and redevelop, we're not going to see anything happen on Schofield Avenue unless we incentivize developers to do it. So for numerous reasons, I'm for the amendment, like you said, Steve, and Roy. And Gail, I know you missed a couple of those meetings because you were out, but you really extensively beat this thing up to make sure that it was palatable for the village, palatable for our taxpayers. And we tried to put a plan forth. The village listened to us, what we wanted or what we thought was the best. And to make it successful, to make it work for our taxpayers. There has been some projects that have been done in the past that have not been so successful. You wouldn't see us, I mean, ultimately, I wouldn't be voting for this if I saw a dead end street on this thing, because I don't want to see any more bad projects happen either. So with that, I'm completely for this project. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gearing.
Can I go on top?
Sure, Mr. Miller, go ahead.
If we do nothing tonight, we're still gonna have more than enough funds to replace, Schofield Avenue.
Michael? Do you have a response to that?
He said there's like 6
Still
years.
got a question, I think, on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to, so you're paying attention.
Yeah. So my point being is, we don't need to borrow the 8.3 million or whatever it is here, or whatever. We're still gonna have the funds available to do the 3.5 million to repair or replace Schofield Avenue. I haven't seen anything that we've been successful at from a development standpoint, whether it's in TID 1 or TID 2 or anywhere else. I haven't seen where we've been able to manage it. We don't have the structure for doing that. Even when we granted or had requests for some funding, through the TIF financing that would, to meet the but-for test, I don't think we've been able to accomplish it very smoothly. So I'm just saying, there isn't anything that gives me a comfort level that we're gonna be able to manage it correctly. And I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I just want to add to my statement. I did speak to a couple residents this week, both of which were kind of on the fence. One was leaning towards yes, one was leaning towards no, but they both did express that if we were to approve it, that they did not want to see the village get in the business of purchasing land and dabbling with real estate. I know we had money earmarked for that. I'm just letting everybody know what was discussed with me. If there should be a motion that come forward.
Well, I can't speak for the board, but from a plan commission perspective, the reality of having that ability to purchase a piece of land has more to do with buying a sliver somewhere in order to affect a boundary, not unlike what, I don't know, did we sell that piece where the Starbucks went in down by Rothschild, or did?
No.
Gave it away.
Gave it away.
Gave it away.
Yeah, okay,
Bad deal.
So like I say, if the board had intention of buying something, it would be with the idea of buying it for the road or something like that, not buying a piece of property from a particular homeowner or owner. I mean, that really isn't the intention of that money at all. It's to allow you flexibility in the event that you need to reconfigure something.
Such as eminent domain or right-of-way access. Mr. Garrett, go ahead.
And that's what I was gonna reference. Thank you, Joe, for bringing it up. I was gonna reference, maybe we should have clarification in there,
Right.
what that money's being spent for.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you know, again, I don't know that we wanna be allowing the village to be buying somebody's property to demo a building and just to prepare it for a greenlight and sit there for 5 years or something. Or wanting to give it away for $10,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 cheaper than what they got into it just to incentivize tax. I think we leave that up to the developer to do that. So
The worry that came up in both conversations I had was that we were gonna buy land, clear it, do whatever we need to do, prepare it, and then give it to a developer for $1. At which I can understand their concern from that aspect,
So I'll make a comment. I would object to that also because we are not in the land purchase. We are facilitators. If we have a group of people that have adjoining properties, we could facilitate the people getting together with the developer. It's actually when municipalities get involved in land purchase, all of a sudden the price goes up and everybody knows that. And I would object that if it's to a small piece of land, we would definitely participate in the facilitation process of getting people together. I don't see us, we bought enough land. We have enough. And we've been selling it. But that's not specified in this draft.
No.
I think what we're saying is the board needs to specify, if we approve, board needs to specify, or we need to specify that those documents or verbiage needs to be put in there.
But Gary, we have talked about this stuff a lot. I mean, there has been discussions for it. It's not part of what's being presented tonight.
Yeah, I understand. I think there was some potential of them wanting to buy a particular blighted site to take it down if there's some contamination. I think there was some conversation in our planning commission meeting on that. I think now we're just getting down to the nitty gritty where people are saying and listening, saying, we don't need to be doing that. Let the developer do that, right? Have them come in with the but for, if we gotta give them the money for it, at that point, that's what you do. Then the board has the capability of doing that. Don't let the village get involved in that. I don't think our citizens want us to be involved in that. Because it hasn't, in the past, hasn't been really successful.
Yeah, but that's not how the draft is.
Well, we can modify that.
Well,
Can we?
how do you account for any possible? I mean, at some point there has to be, and I know that trust has been an issue, but this particular board, I trust that they won't do that.
Joe, on the building that they built, the monstrosity out there on Cam Phillips, that's just been going like this. And we got inflation at 8%. I don't know what it's gonna cost to finish the baby. But I don't know what the overrun's gonna be. But nobody even wants to talk about that. Schofield Avenue, I saw another business just closed again. Nice coffee shop closed. And if we're gonna tear that street up and put concrete back in, that's gonna be a whole year project. How many of those businesses are gonna fold? Most of them are on a shoestring right now.
It's gotta happen.
Through 2 years of COVID.
Eventually, it's gotta happen.
I know it's gotta happen, but they fixed blacktop in.
Plan commission members here, this is not a debate with our visitors. This is talk amongst yourself, and I think we've got good discussion going. Anything else?
I'd just like to bring up something that Jim had mentioned, management goals, policies, and accountability. We've seen a lot of TIF failures in the past with, to my knowledge, no accountability. So I guess I would like to hear how you would address the concerns that Jim has, that has been expressed by some of our members. Is that gonna be in someone's performance plan that they have to achieve the $10 million, or what, and the cash flow, it was 1.2 million a year? Is that going to be someone's goal in their performance plan?
You're saying that we're gonna create a market for somebody to buy a property? I think the plan is we have brought in Kristen Fish Peterson and Redevelopment Resources to help to promote the fact that there are sites that are eligible for development on the avenue. They may be in private ownership. The plan is that she would meet with all those owners and find out, and inform them, I guess, that we have this tool in place. Then they need to bring forth a plan that would then meet the but-for test. Is it realistic to say we're gonna have X number of development dollars, X number of increment every year? I don't think so. I would disagree with that thinking. I don't know, Kristen, what you think, but, or anyone here, I guess, but certainly we would want some assistance in that. We recognize that we are not equipped as staff doing that, so we need to bring someone in that has the knowledge. So that's my take on that.
I would agree. I don't think giving a hard number on how much development occurs as a way to gauge how someone's performance is a fair way of doing it. I mean, if the economy takes a dump two years from now, that's not that individual's fault. Are they gonna lose their job because of something that's not out of their control? I struggle with that. I think there's gotta be a different way to gauge that.
So you're next, Mr. Gear.
Thank you. Keith, I think we've had this conversation a little bit, and if we can't allow staff to be accountable for that, I mean, us business owners, we can't just send a salesman out on the road and say, here, go sell, and then he brings in 50,000 and we're paying him 150,000. There has to be accountability there, okay? So I guess what I'm not gonna put Kristen under the bus because I have a lot of respect for her, but in our conversations or the conversations I've had is somebody needs to be held accountable. We can't hire Kristen and just pay her a fee without having accountability with it. So I think what we're gonna ask is, okay, who's gonna be accountable for that? Is Kristen is she on a performance basis? Is she on by the hour? How is she being paid? And what's the repercussion if there's nothing brought to the table without a certain parameter of the economics going to hell in the handbasket with the war, or whatever it may be, right? How do we hold somebody accountable? No different than we hold our salespeople accountable when they go out on the road, Mark, correct? You just don't send somebody out there on a whim and just pay them by the hour and not having them under some kind of a performance, right? That's what drives people as well. Give them, you know what, if they can meet 3 million, why don't we get them at 6 million and we'll give them another 2% or 5%? Why don't we incentivize them to get it there quicker and faster?
Do you want me to address that?
If you're willing to, I guess, I certainly.
Sure, the way I drafted my contract is that it would be an hourly fee for getting the amendment passed, because if the amendment doesn't pass, there's no more work. Then the next hourly fee for meeting with all the property owners. And then the next phase is the marketing. And the fee, the performance bonus or the performance pay would come if I can bring a deal to the table. So that would not be fee for service, that would be performance based.
So can you just give us a guesstimate, Kristen? What is the dollar amount? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. What is the upfront cost gonna be before it starts with performance based?
I can't remember it's an estimated number of hours. It's an hourly rate.
And I honestly feel that she's got a ton of experience, all right? I worked with Kristen in the past. I enjoy her. She's very intelligent, very knowledgeable. She can deal with these developers. She's on the same wavelength as them. I have a ton of trust in her, and I understand that staff is admitting that this is not their forte. It's wonderful that they're doing that, right? I feel we need to do that, but we need to have some kind of incentive set up for her to drive that bus, right? She gets a little bit more if she brings more deals, whatever it may be, but without her on board doing this, I wouldn't have voted for this.
Well, so is it just a matter of setting out, okay, we expect all these businesses or all these properties to be contacted in a number of weeks or months or
I
something?
don't care about, Keith, I'm just gonna tell, I don't care about contacting the properties. I want performance.
Sure.
I want a building up there.
Right, but we
I want
can't,
tax base.
we can't market a property that's not for sale.
No, I get it.
So the point is to do that as fast as I am. I'm not gonna let grass grow under my feet.
Well, I know you're not, because you're looking for the.
No, it's not about the money for me,
Well,
Gary,
I
and
know.
period. I'm serious, but we only have 10 years to make something happen here.
It's gotta
And
happen
it's
fast.
it can't happen in 10 years. It has to happen in 2 years or 3 years. It has to happen ASAP so we can get that increment generated.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm passionate about this work. I love it. I love to see the skyline change. I hate blight. I love to eliminate blight. I love to receive property performing to its highest and best value. I love to see new residents living and interacting with communities in a dynamic way. I love it. So that's what drives me, so.
Any other comments from Plan Commission members? Discussion?
I don't think we heard from you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure you did.
Did we?
Yes, you did.
Okay. My bad.
Sorry. I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
I don't remember hearing you.
I've commented on the land purchases by the village.
Oh. Okay.
Not in favor of that.
Yes, you're right, you did. Thank you.
I know I'm up there in years, but not quite that bad. So, any other discussion? So at this point in the agenda and in this process, the board, chair would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the plan for TID 2 as presented.
You could do that by adopting resolution 2022 PC-001.
On the village, not, the qualification of how they're gonna purchase property. I don't know, maybe do it.
I know, I thought that discussion, we didn't need.
We just have to have we have to have trust and faith in what they're, I do agree. We don't have any to do that.
Okay. We'll get it. So, have you rethought your motion, Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-PC-001 to amend TID 2.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Cronin, second by Garrett, to adopt resolution number 2022-PC-001. I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote on the question. Roll call vote, Valerie?
White,
Aye.
Winell,
No.
and Cronin,
Aye.
Parent,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Marshall,
No.
Lumber,
Aye.
And the ayes have it, resolution is approved, and that's finishes the business for the plan commission. I would hope that you're gonna stay around for the action by the village board. Otherwise,
Is the planning adjourned then? Or can I ask?
Actually, it's not.
it's after it would be adjourned after the board.
Let's run through, the Board of Trustees, under number 6. There's 2 actions there, an A and a B. So, action following on Plan Commission decision. There's a resolution, actually, we only have one.
One or the other.
One or the other.
Okay.
so you either
Okay.
adopt the resolution.
One is yea,
So
one is nay.
they're put on there both, so that it's ready. So A is resolution number 2022-008, a resolution approving an amendment to the tax incremental district TID number 2, parent TID number 2, project plan for the village of Weston, Marathon County, Wisconsin. Or B, resolution number 2022-009, a resolution to terminate Tax Increment Finance District TID 2. And right now we have, just so the audience knows, Mr. Minell is a trustee, I'm a trustee, Lauren's a trustee, Husheng's a trustee, Barb is a trustee, Nate is a trustee, and Yi Zong is absent tonight. I don't know if it's, so Barb, go ahead with the question.
I just wanted to make a motion.
Oh, motion? Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for resolution number 2022-008, a resolution approving an amendment to the tax increment district TID number two, project plan for the village of Weston, Marathon County, Wisconsin.
Motion by Ermeling.
Point of, sorry, I will second that.
Second by trustee Feeney. On the discussion.
Trustee Ermeling, would you accept a friendly amendment that no public dollars will be used for the purchase of land except for stated, or except for explicit, public good such as a street, or land purchased to aid in the widening of the street?
My biggest concern is what if something a little different comes up? I'm not in favor of the village buying property. But I'm concerned if, would we want this to maybe say that would have, if there was something beyond that, would have to go to the planning committee and then the village for approval? I mean, I don't know what could possibly happen in the next 10 years that we might want to buy a little chunk of property because I agree. I would most want it for the right of way and things like that. And I don't know how would.
Trustee Feeney, did you second the motion?
I did.
And we're on the discussion now?
Yes.
Or are you
You
offering?
wanted to do an offer friendly
Right,
amendment.
I'm offering a friendly amendment. We are on discussion.
Okay, so
at this point, you've offered an amendment.
Yes, I
To
have
Barb. Barb, it's either no or yes, so no stops the discussion.
well,
Yes,
then he can make
on that
formal.
friendly amendment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if she is not willing to accept the friendly amendment, then he has to make a formal amendment to the motion.
Right.
Now, so you're just saying that this could be used just for right of way, or could it be?
No, that's just the example. As long as there's an explicit public good, so whether we want to put in more sewage or water pipes, things like that, anything that benefits the village as a whole based on that land purchase.
It's extremely general, what I'm hearing. Extremely general and pie in the sky, a lot of cloud activity here. So make darn sure we know what we're doing here. Because I don't think that can do either or what you're expecting it to do. The way it's being stated. So it's either you're saying, you're gonna make a motion for the boards, future boards, current board, to never buy land.
Right.
That was the whole. But what you're talking right now is, I have no idea how that would look on paper. And how that would hold the board to do what you expect it to do. So I think it's all or nothing.
The point, I think, we are binding the hands of the future board members because I'm not gonna be here. And Mr. Zhang is not gonna be here, even though he's not here, he's not gonna be here.
Right.
So we don't know. It's one of the things I have about binding incoming board decisions, even though we are binding them with this. So if trustee Ermeling is not willing to accept a friendly amendment, you will have to make a formal.
Yeah, I guess I find it too broad.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said.
She finds it too broad, so she's passing and not seconding a friendly amendment.
Mr. Moon,
Yeah, Shane?
I'd like to see any developer wants to work on tip number one cannot start working without a developer agreement, which is approved by the board.
Developer one?
Yes, two.
He needs
Two, I'm sorry.
He needs two.
Anybody is a developer, I don't care. They have to have a developer agreement. and explain what they're gonna do, what's expected from them. Like before, we always had that. But we have to have a developer agreement,
Tied to a purchase, or what are you saying?
Any project.
any project.
We actually do that now.
Right.
It just isn't coming to the board.
Well,
We can bring it to the board. We've done development agreements for the last year.
You're referencing the development agreements to go to with a site.
With a
plan.
site plan, yes.
correct.
I think
Yep.
you would be
We're doing
talking,
that
I
right now.
think you would be talking here more about a commitment to expend funds for assistance as well.
He's talking about
More so, right?
entire-
Just
Let's
consider what developer agreement,
still on it.
what we agree with them, what they're gonna do,
Right.
and what's their timeline.
We're still on the question, and Nate, did you do a formal?
No,
Oh, you didn't?
no, and I won't because it's hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
hard to state what public means, but yes.
Okay. So now that being resolved, Hussein, so we're already in that
I
process.
thought, I'm sorry.
We're on it.
I thought it was completed.
No, that's fine.
what I
Yep,
thought.
okay, I just want to make sure.
I think they understand what I'm saying and they agree with it, so,
Okay,
and they're doing it. But I think the task developer, they didn't have any agreement.
okay.
We didn't have any agreement with them, so.
Any more on the discussion? Any more on the discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can we have a roll call vote?
Roll call vote, I was going to ask for that. All right, hearing no more discussion, Valerie, could you do a roll call, please?
Maloney,
Aye.
Ermeling,
Aye.
Hany,
Aye.
Linnell,
No.
White,
Aye.
Joan is absent, and Zagami.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1 with one absent. And,
I'll ask for remarks for the commissioners.
yeah, remarks from the committee, yeah, go ahead. You
Remarks
first.
from the commissioners? Ms. Marshall? Aaron?
Could we request, Kristen to, give us a report back to the planning board, how, if she brings clients to the village, how their client is being handled or treated or whatever it may be? Do we feel we're moving things along fast?
Like an action plan or?
You to give a monthly or quarterly report to you or just?
Well, also to, because we're not holding Keith or Jen, not that I'm trying to pin them down right now, but if you're bringing a client here and we're being stubborn, not saying, well, we don't want this, we don't want that, I want to know that we need to either loosen up or we need to help get to this development in here, right? And I'm not pointing, I just want to know, we would like to hear some of that feedback if we're being good with our developing community.
And that's a remark. We're under remarks right now. So that's a remark by Commissioner Garn. And then, I would imagine we would start, putting some structure to place as we move forward here. So Gary, why don't we have that on the next agenda and talk about that and detail that a little bit more, okay? Go ahead.
Mr. Crowe?
This is you, I'm sorry.
I want to thank everybody for all the time that we put into this. This has been a long process, and I want to let everybody in the audience know that if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to staff. You can reach out to any of the trustees. We all have emails listed on the village website. So if you have any questions, please let us know. We're happy to help answer them.
I'm sorry, did I forget you, Gail?
No, Gail went first, yeah.
Mr. Jordan?
Let you know again.
Again, like Steve has suggested, it's been a great dialogue, an opportunity to really discuss this at length. And I think we're on a path to see something happen here, and the window is not that great. So I'm encouraged that with somebody on board to really promote this, that we could see something happen here now, not too distant future.
Process. Mr. Minell? Excuse me, trustee Minell.
No comments there either.
I just would like to thank the plan commission members and trustee Minell over the past 18 months, all the work that's been done here. We've had meetings that lasted as long as 3 hours and plus. I appreciate the willingness for you to all sit here and study and read this stuff. Not fun. So that's my comment. as a
Thank you,
commissioner.
Larry. Yep, remarks from trustees, trustee Minell?
I have nothing.
Trustee White,
I've said my piece.
trustee Zagami,
Thank you.
Merlin.
Well, I just want to say, I want to thank the planning commission also for their hard work, and I'm glad we are doing this simply because I find Schofield Avenue in that area a really blighted, unattractive area, and we need to bring the businesses in. And I'm glad we got a person that is going to know how to do that and market that area. And just a reminder that if there's not a development, we aren't going to spend the money. So.
Trustee Feeney.
Thank you, planning commission, for everything you've done. The work that you put in since that previous meeting is really breathtaking. And I know it, I look forward to working with the next partners.
Thank you all. Remarks from myself, dovetailing off of Commissioner Garnt. We put in place, and Jessica is doing a monthly analysis of what's happening in the TIFs. So it's something that.
Detailed ledgers, so.
Yeah, a detailed ledger. It's something that, it just seems that whether it be a commissioner or a trustee is asked for information on what's happening. It's kind of lend itself to some surprises, a lot of questions, what's going on. And so I think we started this a month or two ago.
This last month.
Last month,
The
okay.
finance committee packet from last
Okay.
year. If you're
So-
interested in the year-to-date detail of the TIF expenditure.
I think it's gonna keep, the current board and commission and future board and commissions abreast of what's going on. I mean, I certainly want to see how the labor and how the payroll is put in there and all the different things, and not look at something 18 months later and try to figure out when did it all happen. So I think that'll be a good tool for us to watch. And then working with Christine and her group, I think it's our best chance at success. So anyway, that's my stuff there.
I want to thank Greg Johnson for his attendance tonight too, along with Kristen.
Are you shaming me?
No, I'm not shaming.
Okay, there's more to come, so yes, Gary?
Can I want to commend Lauren for all his years of service.
Oh my, is this a kumbaya or what's going on? Hold hands and sing a
I'm
little
sorry,
bit?
but I didn't realize that this is his last.
Nope.
I don't know.
Nope, he said one.
My last day in office, April 18th.
Yep, April. So if you want to come on, we're gonna have some sandwiches and cookies and stuff.
15 years.
Yep, okay.
Not counting
So,
my service in law enforcement.
let's not push them out yet, so we've got another meeting to go. All right, adjourn from PC.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Moved by Crowder, second by Mumper on the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the piece is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Looking for a motion from the trustees for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Any on discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So carried. Thank you, audience, for attending. And that's it.